I'm Laurie Actman with the Penn Center for Innovation. Today, I'm really happy to host and have with us Katherine Reuther, who is the Executive Director of Penn Health Tech. Penn Health Tech was launched a few years ago as kind of a strategy to support all of the health tech innovation that our dean saw emerging from Penn faculty and students throughout schools here at the university. And they're a close partner of the Penn Center for Innovation, as we also support the development timeline of these commercialization projects. And we're delighted to have Katie here with us. She joined Penn Health Tech over the summer after some wonderful experiences both at Columbia and in the private sector, and is also a Penn alum, so she knows us well.
Yeah, thanks so much, Laurie, and thanks for the invitation. So as Laurie mentioned, I joined Penn about 3 months ago in this new role, and I'm joining Penn with a lot of respect and admiration for what Penn Health Tech has been over the past couple of years. It started about 3 years ago, and looking really forward to the future with our team. So my background, I have a Ph.D. in bioengineering. I also have formal business training with an MBA, co-founded a startup with my time at Columbia, and have also spent some time with the NIH on various concept to clinic programs, trying to leverage the wonderful research that's happening at universities and thinking about how we can actually move those closer to impacting human health and impacting patients. So I wanted to start kind of just by setting the stage with where we're at kind of as a field in terms of university health technology innovation. So many of us are familiar with this concept of bench to bedside, which is the process by which our science and discoveries move from the lab into the clinic and hopefully towards diagnostics or treatment for patients. Just as important is really the reverse translation, where we have these clinical observations and unmet clinical needs that are identified by clinicians and other practitioners, and can identify and bring those back into the lab where we can try to ideate and innovate so that we can also move back towards this forward translation of bringing discoveries to solve some of these unmet clinical needs. And now historically, this translation of research and discoveries from the lab to the bedside is long, expensive, and risky, and sometimes unpredictable. So there's several hurdles that need to be overcome in order to actually move these ideas from the lab to the market. And in some cases, this is so risky and difficult that it's referred to as this valley of death. So on the left-hand side, we have this basic science or enabling technology. And on the right-hand side, we have a solution that is helping patients. And unfortunately, we sort of have this area where it's difficult to cross or traverse this valley of death. And so the question really remains is, why does this exist? Why do we have this valley of death from new discoveries not necessarily reaching patients? And there's a number of reasons. One is because of lack of funding. So on the left-hand side, we get a ton of research into universities towards basic science through the NIH, the NSF, the DoD, a lot of money for basic discovery, which is wonderful. On the right-hand side, we also have a lot of funding that comes from, partners in industry, venture capital, private equity groups that can really fund more commercial milestones for new technologies and new discoveries. But sometimes there's actually a gap in funding that exists between to kind of de-risk these high impact, higher risk ideas and discoveries. And so that might be one reason that this valley of death exists. Other reasons, it could be that we have a technology that isn't maybe addressing a specific clinical need. Maybe there's not a market need for the technology or discovery being developed. Or maybe, the team might not have all the skills necessary in terms of thinking about the commercial side of things, bringing these ideas closer to patients. So as a starting point, Penn Health Tech is really trying to be considerate of three main things. What problem is being solved here? What is the unmet need? Do we have a technology that is proven and we've proven out a concept that can really address that need? And how might we think about maybe a business opportunity for these technologies? And really, this is sort of the sweet spot for innovation if we consider each of these three areas. And in a way, what we're hoping to do is sort of bridge this valley of death through education, through funding, as well as support and resources and connections for our innovators and researchers so that we can help them cross and get their ideas closer to patients. So what we do currently, our mission here is to unite Penn Medicine, Penn Engineering, and other Penn partners to create and advance transformative technologies that are addressing the world's pressing healthcare needs. And so there's a variety of partners across Penn, including PCI, which is an important partner in this process, in addition to CHOP and some of the other partners listed here. We have a wonderful strategic advisory board that brings a lot of this outside expertise and knowledge in thinking about, positioning our ideas and technologies so that we can continue to bring these ideas closer and out into the real world to impact patients. The main pillars so far that we have in terms of our mission are listed here, kind of three main areas. The first around innovation, so working to advance some of the novel health technology ideas and research and support the development of new ideas as well. And we do that by providing funding, resources, and expertise through our accelerator program, which I'll talk more about on the next slide. The second key thing in this is really fostering collaborations and connections within Penn and with outside partners as well to kind of continue to translate and support development of these new technologies. And then the last thing, a big part of this is education. So supporting and educating future innovators and what it takes to commercialize and translate new technologies is a big part of our process. So one of the main flagship programs that we have is our Health Technology Accelerator Program. And the goal here is really to facilitate the ideation, development, testing, translation, and commercialization of new technologies to really advance and improve health and healthcare. And so the three main aspects of this program is we have an annual funding cycle where we're able to provide funding towards projects. We're also able to provide support and project management towards achieving proof of concept for the development of these new technologies. And then we also provide resource connections. So that could be access to industry experts, as well as some of the complementary programs at Penn and in the Philadelphia ecosystem that can support some of the engineering and design, manufacturing, as well as the regulatory and reimbursement hurdles and considerations towards those areas. So since 2017, the program has done really well. So about $1.5 million have been invested into about 45 projects. And those projects have brought back about $30 million in the form of follow-on grants. So that could be research grants back to the university. It could also be small business grants from the NIH, as well as professional investment from venture capital and angel groups. And about 10 or more startups have kind of come out of Penn Health Tech as well. And these numbers are actually from 2020. We're currently working on updating these, so we imagine they'll be growing as well over the next couple of months. Another pillar that is mentioned on the previous slide is really connecting. So there's a couple of ways Penn Health Tech does that. One of that is through faculty salons. So these are invite-only forums where we have clinicians, engineers, scientists coming together to bring forward some of the unmet clinical needs in healthcare and hopefully foster new discussions and collaborations to maybe develop and support new technologies from those discussions. We also, as mentioned, provide access and support in terms of connecting to various resources. This could be matchmaking clinicians and engineers internally at Penn, but also being considerate of industry experts and other partners in the Philadelphia ecosystem and across the US. And then lastly, another thing that Penn Health Tech has been involved in terms of connecting is some of the outside technologies that are being developed, and some of them listed here, like Butterfly and the hyperfine MRI machine, is something that is being used, and we're helping facilitate and bring that in collaboration with the Center for Healthcare Innovation to utilize new technologies at Penn Medicine and within our health system. The third pillar that I mentioned is really education. So this comes in the form of a couple things. The first is some speakers and workshops that we have throughout the year. We also have been engaged with the Catalyzer at Penn program, which is a competition where students are able to address unmet clinical needs through hardware prototypes, and they get to pitch their solutions to these unmet needs. And we have an award each year towards the Catalyzer program at Penn. And then in addition, part of what my efforts will be around is continuing to develop curriculum in this area, new courses that are specific for Penn Health Tech teams, and also helping students navigate the existing landscape for curriculum and getting trained in this area as well. So I wanted to so that's a kind of quick overview of Penn Health Tech. I just wanted to provide some examples of some of the projects and teams that have come through Penn Health Tech so you can get an idea of what that might look like. So the first is a device that was developed for blood clot prevention. And so this is was developed by initially a postdoc, John Welsh, and his faculty advisor, Mark Kahn. And this device is addressing the unmet clinical need of trying to reduce the amount of venous thromboembolisms that are occurring in the hospitals. These are really increase the length of stay and the costs associated with these patients that will develop this condition. Currently, methods for doing this include compression and anticoagulation medication, and unfortunately, they're not sufficient in really preventing venous thromboembolism. So the solution that this Osciflex team developed is the Oscipulse system, which creates very rapid, shallow bursts of compression to enhance venous blood flow. They're a startup that is now at the Penn Center, and they're doing some tremendous work getting closer towards an FDA submission and hopefully FDA clearance for their medical device. An additional technology that came through Penn Health Tech is the human blinking eye on a chip. So this is from Professor Dan Ha in bioengineering. They're addressing the need for new and reliable techniques for assessing ocular complications. And their approach is to really use in vitro, or this idea that in vitro models really have significant potential to scale the experimentation that we do on human tissues and possibly predict human responses in a better way than animal testing. And so what they've developed is this blinking in vitro model here we can see on the right-hand side that can be modeling the human ocular surface and hopefully can be used to study eye diseases and test new drugs. And they're doing some great work now with various sponsored research agreements with Big Pharma to utilize their technology. Another technology that was seeded through Penn Health Tech is this next-gen aqueous shunt to treat glaucoma. So this team is addressing the important and difficult issue of glaucoma, which is the second leading cause of blindness in the world. What happens here is excess fluid is building up inside the eye, and it puts tremendous pressure on the eye and potentially could damage the optic nerve, which would lead to blindness. So the current treatment options for these patients are minimally invasive surgery, as well as these tube shunt implants, but unfortunately they have limited efficacy and or high revision rates associated with these treatments. So this team is developing the VisiPlate, which is a next generation aqueous shunt that helps patients retain their vision by lowering the eye pressure that is in these glaucoma patients. And right now they're raising a Series A, and they're also at Penn. An additional team is Osteo. So this is a smart distraction device for pediatric patients with craniomaxillofacial deformities. So each year, about 200,000 children are born with these deformities, and oftentimes as a treatment that's utilized is surgical placement of a distractor device that can slowly expand the bone and hopefully regenerate the bone over time. But unfortunately, as you can imagine, there's a lot of limitations associated with this, including high risk of infection and pain, as well as visible scarring. So the solution this team is developing is a fully implantable, magnetically driven bony distraction device to correct these craniomaxillofacial deformities and hopefully address the limitations of the existing treatments. And then I think this might be my last example. So this is Right Air, which is a wearable ventilator. So this came through the Health Tech Accelerator. They're addressing the issue of COPD and how this leads to many Americans suffering with intolerable shortness of breath. The current mechanisms to treat these patients are supplemental oxygen as well as inhaled medication. But unfortunately, it's not the best treatment. These patients aren't able to do some of the activities of daily living, such as basic activities like navigating stairs. And so this team developed a wearable mechanical breathing assist device that performs the work of breathing, and have had some great success recently, raising significant money from venture capital to continue to develop their technology. Actually, one more. So this is the last one I'll share is the NeuroAlert technology, which is a stroke monitoring system. This team is addressing the issue that many strokes are happening in the hospital, but unfortunately they go undetected, leading to a lot of deaths as well as a significant health cost burden to the health system. So their solution is a wearable, non-invasive, continuous stroke monitoring system that can detect and alert hospital staff to the onset of stroke very quickly relative to today's standard of care, so that they can hopefully prevent some of these unintended disability or deaths associated with stroke within the hospital. So I want to just kind of close and happy to address any questions, just to share that, it's an exciting place to be at Penn in terms of the energy and excitement around health tech and innovation and in the Philadelphia area. And there's been a lot of wonderful innovations, as we know, that have come out of Penn, including the mRNA vaccine for COVID. And so we're building on a wonderful foundation. And what we're really excited to help support and lead in terms of Penn Health Tech is continuing to elevate Penn and Philadelphia as really a hub for medical device innovation that attracts innovators and the people that really make innovation possible towards bringing some of these new discoveries and health technologies out of the university environment and into the real world to impact human health. So I wanted to kind of close by just indicating some areas that you might be able to interact with us. The first is that you can apply for our 2022 annual funding cycle. So we'll be sharing that call for proposals in the spring. You're also welcome to email us and meet with us to discuss your idea and technology, and hopefully we can provide some connections for you or point you in the right direction in terms of resources at Penn or resources elsewhere to help the development of your health technology. You could also visit our website and sign up for our newsletter that will allow you to kind of stay aware of what's happening at Penn Health Tech and some of the programming that we're offering. And then kind of just following us on social media through Twitter or LinkedIn. These are also options to kind of stay engaged with Penn Health Tech. So with that, I'm happy to address any questions and look forward to interacting with you all in the next couple of months.
Great. Thanks so much, Katie. And while others maybe come up with questions, I had a few follow-ups for you. And those were some great examples of successes and ones that have touched a lot of folks at Penn. So that was great to see. Can you talk about just some common qualities you see in terms of what's the right stage to be coming to you? I know you showed a lot of examples, but if you could just talk a little bit about that and how when you like to get started in building the relationship.
Yeah, I think the earlier the better. And, partly so that we can sort of help direct and think about and propose some kind of ideas for how you might think about the development of your technology. So, the earlier the better, so that we could kind of direct in terms of possible resources that we might be able to offer or other resources on campus. We're happy to engage pretty early. In terms of the portfolio of technologies that we sort of put funding towards, it's actually pretty diverse. So some of them could be earlier ideas. Some of them can be later stage technologies that have a little bit of technical de-risking already completed. But we're kind of managing, I would say, a diverse portfolio in terms of stage. So definitely the earlier the better. And it's this idea that you don't want to spend a lot of time and money kind of developing something that might be like a bridge to nowhere. So we want to get in early and be able to provide some input to help provide some insight and hopefully connections so that you can think about some of these important and critical de-risking milestones that you would need to do in order to bring your idea closer to patients.
Good, thank you. And in terms of Penn and kind of the external market, just are there certain trends or areas where you think, Penn is ideally positioned to be a gap filler in terms of technology, or, kind of what you're seeing?
Yeah, so I mean, what's really exciting about Penn is that, we have like the tremendous engineers and scientists and researchers that are, a stone's throw away from an incredible health system. And so there's a lot of opportunities for, early design and a lot of like early questions around addressing different, how health technologies might fit into the clinical workflow, as well as implementing and testing technologies in the health system. So I think in a way, Penn is uniquely positioned there, and that's really kind of a wonderful ingredient to have. In terms of different like trends, I would say certainly, we've seen a lot of important innovations around telehealth, as well as kind of wearable sensors and, kind of what are we going to be doing for remote patient monitoring. I think those are all things that we've really seen emerge through COVID and will continue to emerge, as well as digital health and, data in healthcare as well. So these are things that, especially with the new Data Science Institute building, kind of coming, or the data focused building that's coming up soon, that's going to be a really important key player in all of this ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. And just also wondering, in terms of future plans for Penn Health Tech, is there anything you can share in terms of how you all may be evolving based on the needs you're seeing here at Penn?
Yeah, that's a great question, Lori. So I'm still on my listening tour, I would say. And so really trying to assess and understand the Penn ecosystem and where the needs are and what our strengths are and what we're able to offer with Penn Health Tech. So definitely, more to come in that area. A big thing that is sort of kind of bubbling up is how we might sort of educate and better prepare the participants that are applying for funding to our program, so that we can get the best type of proposals possible, and how we might be able to scale the efforts that we do as we expand and fund more projects. So I think that's definitely in the pipeline, but looking forward to sharing more on that in the coming months.
Okay, great. We do have a question in the chat. Wondering if you're open to opportunities brought by non-Penn entrepreneurs who lack science or technology expertise.
Yeah, so in terms of being eligible for our funding, it has to be, a Penn full-time employee. So the PI has to be really associated with Penn. However, we are definitely open to discussions with folks outside of Penn as well, at any time. So feel free to reach out to us via email, and we're happy to connect and meet you and see if there's anything that we might be able to offer in terms of resources or connections. But being eligible for funding requires Penn full-time employees.